Here comes the sun. The sun's magnetic field set to shift in the next 3 to 4 months, according to Stanford researchers and NASA. The event, which happens about once every 11 years, what does it all really mean to us earthly inhabitants? Joining us now from Chicago, we've got Weatherbell chief forecaster Joe Bastardi, and here in New York, Discover Magazine editor-at-large Corey Powell. Thanks for being with us, gentlemen. Corey, let's start with you. What exactly is going on here?
Okay. The sun is a big, basically magnetic lava lamp. A lot of eruptions going on. We feel that here on Earth. Every 11 years, it goes from high to low. The activity switches on, switches down. Actually, it's every other cycle. Every 22 years, the whole thing turns upside down.
Are we one of those? What's the thing that's turning upside down?
So it's all the magnetic fields of the sun. You think, well, the magnetic field of the sun, the reason you care about it is because we are inside the magnetic field of the sun. That causes auroras, it causes power surges, it can cause blackouts. It has in the past. It causes damage to communication satellites. So we feel this all the time, just sometimes we feel it more than others, and this is one of the strong times right now.
Okay, and now Joe Bastardi, what does this mean first for your business of forecasting? What happened the last time 11 years ago, because you were probably around doing forecasting, and then what does it mean for businesses that rely on weather and weather forecasting?
Well, what's important isn't the immediate flip of the sun. It's the fact that it's flipping means that the solar cycle is just about over. And if you take a look at this chart I sent in, this particular solar cycle is really going into the tank. It's half as strong as the last one. And there's a lot of studies that say that the next solar cycle is going to be down to next to nothing. In fact, very little sunspot activity. And that has implications as far as the weather goes. And testing this whole theory is that the sun, oceans, and stochastic events versus CO2. You got to understand that we've had 200 years with high sunspot activity. Now, in the shorter term, a lot of times when you have the low geomagnetic field, you get a lot of blocking over the North Pole, and that implies a cold winter, and we're actually looking for a pretty cold winter in the United States. So that's something that we've seen before. But in the longer term, it may mean that the next sunspot cycle is really in the tank.
And Joe, just to follow up, link this to the whole global warming argument here. Is this a function or a cause of, or is this a contradiction to the fears that we're heating up too much?
Well, what we believe is, a lot of us believe that the sun, the oceans, and again, stochastic events, volcanoes, are the main overall climate drivers, and that CO2 is boxed in and can do very, very little, if not anything at all, against the entire climate. So we're getting, you guys got to understand that with the switch in the ocean cycles and the solar cycles, we're getting our tests now, so we should be able to get the answer. I don't know why these folks on the CO2 side of the argument are afraid of this test coming up, but we're going to see within the next 20 or 30 years. We've had 17 years of it leveling off. It's been starting down since the Pacific cooled, and there are people who believe it's going to be mighty, mighty chilly by the year 2030 after this next sunspot cycle, if it goes into the tank like that. So this is a fascinating thing for science overall.
Right. Mighty chilly. Corey, you got anything on this?
I do want to respond to that. So, I mean, if you look at the very long-range record, historically, lower levels of solar activity are associated with lower temperatures. So, roughly speaking, the solar activity has been trending downward over the past 50 years. So you would expect just from the sun, the temperatures would have been trending downward for the last 50 years. So if there's been any warming, it's been despite the sun, not because of the sun.
Oh, I see.
Well,
okay,
you have oceanic cycles. Corey, you have oceanic cycles. You have the fact that we did not have satellite measurements to 1978. You're not going to get away with that, because what's happened is we had our hottest decade ever in the 1930s. The 30s, 40s, and 50s are very similar to the period we went through now, when the Pacific and the Atlantic warmed in tandem. My point to you is we can objectively measure it now, and I'm not going to let you get away with that stuff.
Okay.
It's been warm, but you've had 200 years of hyper sunspot activity compared to the Victorian era, where the sunspots were in the tank.
Okay.
So we're going to see who's going to win this.
And you've done a good job, Joe Bastardi, of making sure he doesn't get away with that. But Corey, you get one last crack, and then we got to go.
Right. Well, and we have very good climate proxies going back over 1,000 years. In fact, really longer than that. And so you can look back at tree ring records. I mean, obviously, these are not perfect records, but all these things get fed into the climate models. It's true. It's true. You cannot look at climate, day to day or year to year, but decade to decade and century to century. What's
We've
going on
had
right
ice
now is
ages at
something
Let the record
7,000
show,
parts.
folks. Got to go. Let the record show, though. Journalist takes on Joe Bastardi, weatherman, about the weatherman. That means journalist
We've
very
had
brave.
ice ages at
All right, we got to go,
7,000
Joe. We
parts
got to
per
go,
million.
babe. Thank you very
Okay.
much, gentlemen. Corey Powell and Joe
My
Bastardi.
pleasure.
Thank
We'll
you.
sell